So our next session, the blind spots of IT experts on security and what companies must do against it, unless they have too much money and manpower. That's a long title, but very interesting. And I would love to introduce you to our speaker, Dr. Juergen Rink. He's the editor-in-chief of magazin from Heise Medien. Juergen.
So good morning. The blind spots of IT experts on security and how companies can tackle it. I want to point out in two short sessions what I mean with it. So it's not so much the common user that threatens security in a company, it's actually the software in your company you use and how your IT department deals with it. And I have two examples for it. First, the fatal software dependencies, Log4j, and the consequences, because most companies, as I see it, still haven't learned from Log4j enough. And the second is why we scanned the whole internet in order to find open ports. So let's start with the first one. Log4j. I'm sure most of you remember Log4j, and for those who don't, Log4j is a Java-based logging utility, and it's code from an open source software library. And end of last year, the Java log library Log4j sent shockwaves through companies because attacker could load malicious code, and it was so simple to execute. And still up to now, many companies are not aware why the Log4j bug is so different from other security breaches, and why this is a milestone and a turning point. Because what happened after Log4j, the bug was detected, tables of software in companies were compiled by hand because nobody knew, even with Apple, where Log4j was being used, because it's just a code from a software library used in any software. Nobody knew where it was, so nobody knew whether the company was threatened or not, was being threatened or not. So in short, they didn't know where Log4j was actually used, and our editors received mails from people we work with, and they told us that IT departments sent mails to all of their employees to ask, hey, do you know where Log4j is used or not? So this Log4j can happen again, and again, because everywhere, nearly in any software, you use bits and code from software libraries, and nobody has a list for it. So how do we solve the problem? And again, I point out many companies still not doing this. So in an ideal world, what you want to do is you build a central internal database with all dependencies of all applications, which is of course searchable, and with a connection to security breaches. And then you just have to type Log4j into a search box to find all the software bits that are threatened. So, and the thing is, it's there, and you should really implement it in your company. And this is called SBOM, Software Bill of Materials, which might be new to some of you, but in other industries it's well known. It's called Structures Bill of Materials. So if you have a machine, of course you have a list of all parts of it. And what you need in your company is the same with software. So, and I point out here Cyclone DX. It's one of the more well-known Software Bill of Materials protocols. And in Germany, we are not very good at it at the moment. Still, SBOM is not very well known. How this subject is being pushed in the States, I give you an example for that. The White House issued an executive order that made SBOM mandatory for all software manufacturers who deliver to government agencies. So, and our BSI doesn't know SBOM very much. So if you purchase software again in a company, ask your manufacturer about SBOM. Yeah, you shouldn't buy software without software bill of materials again. And the more customers do that, the more companies do that, the more the standard SBOM is being established. I think it's mandatory. So Cyclone DX is one thing. The dependency track software, also on open source software, is the other thing. So with Cyclone DX, you have a list which is not very digestible. And if you use dependency track, you get a searchable list of software bill of materials. I'll give you an example just for Log4j. What you do is, if you have all your parts and bits and codes from software libraries in dependency track, you type in log4j, and you immediately get where this is used, how dangerous it is. So all applications have to be covered without exception if you want to use SBOM in a really good way. So it's actually, you have to solve non-technical problems because every manufacturer, your whole IT department, your software development have to follow SBOM rules. And the benefit of that is clear. When the next major security breach occurs, you will know the impact on your organization immediately, and you can focus on how to fix the problem instead of frantically searching, hectically searching where this particular code is being used. And still, I wonder, Log4j sent such shockwaves through the industry, why many companies haven't learned from it. SBOM is really something new, especially in Germany, for many companies. So this was the first example I bring, and the next one is why we scanned the internet. Now, it all started with a kind of statement which you can read again and again in IT forums. So as long as you don't set up a domain, that is yourcompany.net, an IP address, that is this number there, is quasi-secret. Really, I hear that from IT experts. So they tell you that, okay, there are over 4 billion addresses, so it's impossible to guess a published service with a particular address. So, and since we heard this way too often, we started, okay, let's scan the internet. We looked at the complete IPv4 address space for open ports. That was the task, to show companies how bullshit this is. No, and I spoiled this. We found so many interesting things that we did a title story in one of our issues. And by the way, did I mention that we are the biggest IT magazine in Europe? Now I did. So, we got triggered by a whistleblower. We have, as a hidden service, we have a darknet forum where whistleblowers can give us information in a very secret and anonymous way. That's called Heise Investigativ. It's, for those of you who are interested in that, it's based on the Secure Job platform, which is being used by Washington Post, New York Times, I think Süddeutsche for 2 or 3 years now. And it's really good if you work with whistleblower and you have an investigative team. So this whistleblower told us we should look at particular open ports in industrial plants. And he gave us a hint which protocol we should use. So that was even more motivation to scan the whole address space of the internet. this is the URL where you get access to Heise Investigativ, and if you know a darknet a bit, this is a typical darknet URL. You don't have to remember that, you just click on Heise.de Investigativ. How did we scan the internet? Well, use open source software. We used ZMap and systematically scanned the entire IPv4 internet. Fun thing, when we started this with servers in Germany, it took 2 or 3 minutes. We got the first mails from our provider. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't scan. We shouldn't do port scans. So so what do you do if you're not allowed in Germany? You go to Serbia. You can do anything there. So we rented. IT business, I mean. So we rented a server in Serbia and set up ZMap and, started. And guess how long did it take to scan the whole IPv4 internet? So I give you 3 choices. Up to 10 minutes, up to 1 hour, and up to 10 hours. So who's for the first one, up to 10 minutes? Okay, who's for the second one, 10 minutes to 1 hour? Most of them. And who's for 1 hour to 10 hours? Okay. All of you are right, because it depends on the speed of the internet, of course. If you have a 10 gigabit line, you are finished in 5 minutes. So everybody can do this. So remember where we started. If you don't have an URL, you are quasi-secret, so 5 minutes. For starters, before we really searched for open ports in industrial plants, for starters, we run the first scan on SMB port 445, and some of you might know that. Windows users know that it's the protocol from Windows file shares. So what we find, this is the result from ZMap. We got 63,000 IP addresses that reported an SMB service, and then we tried a script that requested an SMB connection without login. And 1,500 servers readily responded on our request. So what did we find? We found entire accountant records of 2 South American construction companies. We found entire records of Central American vacation clubs. We got contracts, invoices, and resolutions of an Asian regional administrations. Of course, many private NAS devices. That's not very interesting. This is just private stuff. And Germany, we found invoices, customer lists, sales evaluations, cost estimates of a North Rhine-Westphalian office furniture retailer. So, but that was for starters. So the next thing is, we looked not for SMB, we looked for a protocol, he's nodding, for MQTT protocol, which is widely used for sensors in plants, industrial plants, to communicate with each other. And they communicate via a server, and this server is called MQTT broker. So for our second scan of the internet, we looked for a particular part of this MQTT brokers. Guess what? We found 10,000 addresses. And of course, there are many smart home devices around the world in private homes. So what we did then was we narrowed that down by searching specifically for static IP addresses. Then you have the private stuff away. And you are left with open ports that mainly belong to companies. So what do we find? We found a lot public transport services. I tell you just 3 examples. A service provider from West Germany had open telemetry data for buses of several public transport companies, free for everybody on MQTT server without any protection. And we found a server in Norway with live telemetry data of 70 buses sending vehicle data and positions, and one of my colleagues in my investigative team told me he could change the sign, the digital signs on the bus. So we thought, okay, let's have greetings from CT magazine or something like that. So we didn't do that. By the way, when we, it might sound funny, but when we find something like that, this is more fun, but it could be more severe, we don't publish it. Yeah. We inform the companies and we give them time to close their security gaps and holes, and then we go public. So we act really with a responsible disclosure, otherwise it wouldn't be really good. So that was, Norway. Let's go to Taiwan. This is even more fun. We found operators of traffic surveillance cameras in Taiwan on MQTT servers. And they run an artificial intelligence system on that as well, on this server, to evaluate the images from traffic surveillance cameras and to detect rule violations. We found the URLs of all the video streams and looked at Taiwan traffic congestion for a few hours. So it's just open, it's completely open. Yeah. That was the second scan, and the last scan I want to tell you about is another protocol which is called ISO-TSIP, and this protocol is used to connect Siemens Simatic systems. So we really go now into industrial plants, and what we found was a gateway of a German provider, IBH Softec, which one can connect older Siemens systems with a network. And of course, what we do, the operator didn't do that in a really proper way. IBH Softec is not to blame. They tell every customer, protect your system, use a password. Of course, not every IT department was doing that, so we found IBH Softec gateways open, and for instance, we found according to the IP geodatabase, oil industry plant in the Middle East. And we could just take over the whole system. Yeah? Imagine the damage one could do with that. Yeah? And that was an oil plant. Don't know about nuclear power plants. So, and again, IBH Softec is not to blame. It's the applications. It's how companies are really dealing with open ports without any software protection. So these were the examples. I tried to do a summary. First, the next bug in code from libraries will come because still nobody knows where codes from software libraries is being used in your software or in software you buy from manufacturers. So install SBOM, Software Bill of Materials, plus dependency track, so that you're not surprised anymore from software libraries if the next bug will come. And second thing, yes, you can scan the internet in less than an hour. So use professionals to check your open ports and maybe other security breaches as well. Don't trust IP people too much. And the thing is, you have to do that all the time. So install a kind of API to other companies. They monitor your ports, whether anything is open or not. So, thank you very much. You can get in contact with me via mail, phone, LinkedIn. And that's one of our merchandising thing which sells really good. Thank you very much.